Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Letitia and all of this is Letitia. I want y'all like going looking for and all this is Letitia and y'all don't find me. Okay, anywho, so yes, I have my base done. That's because the focus of this particular review and or tutorial has absolutely nothing to do with my base or my eyebrows. That I'm still looking for a good place to get them microbladed at so one cannot like be all, gang banging and the other is straight. But I digress. So for today's video, and I feel like I'm late doing this one, although this palette has only been out for like a week or two. In the YouTube world, that means it's been out for a year. So like move on to the next one. The palette that I'm going to be reviewing and demoing is by none other than Natasha Denona, and this is her Circo Loco palette. Okay, typically my reviews, I'm all excited and I really have not had anything yet on my channel that I'm like, no. This, I fear, is not going to be one of those videos, and this is why. Okay, so again, the Circo Loco palette by Natasha Denona, which is an amazing brand. Her pigments, her colors, her shades, her palettes are phenomenal. And they actually are compared to some more luxurious luxury brands such as Pat McGrath. I know, for instance, if I go into Sephora and they don't have a particular Pat McGrath product such as her palettes, they always, it does not matter the location. I don't know if this is like part of their training, but they always usher me over to Natasha Denona. Rightfully so. Great pigment, amazing color payoff, variety of shades. They show up, they're brown girl friendly, so they serve their purpose. However, this particular palette, and trust me when I say that I'm very conflicted because I love this palette, like I do. I love this palette, but I have to give you guys the reasons that I'm on the fence about this palette. This one has 15 shades, okay? We have, let me see, I believe we have an assortment of metallics, of cream mattes, of shimmers, right? This color story for this particular palette is centered around 3 colors: blues, oranges, and pinks. And this is it here. So I applied some eyeshadow primer by ABH, Anastasia, Beverly Hills. And now we are going to get into a look using this palette. And as I'm doing so, I'm just going to kind of give you, at least from my perspective, my yays and nays with this palette. First brush I'm going to use is Morphe M441. And I am going to use as a transition shade. See, that's the first issue. I'm used to palettes that have a transition shade, whether you use it as a transition shade or not. This particular palette, there is no transition shade. I feel like this palette was more or less kind of like a novelty palette, a specialty palette. Could be used for something such as, carnival or some sort of very colorful celebration, summertime palette. But even so, there is no transition shades, at least not the traditional one. And I feel like this palette is lacking because it does not have at least one somewhat neutral or semi-neutral transition shade. I don't really know anybody that would use something such as like a neon orange for a transition shade unless they are doing something that is very artistic, which in my opinion is the vibe for this palette, but we're gonna try and make it work. So let me see, because I cannot necessarily do a transition shade with this palette, I am going to go ahead and use Acrobat, which is this shade here. Gonna use that one using my Morphe M441 brush. I mean, the colors are stunning. The colors are beautiful. She definitely did not slack on the pigment in these shades, but she never does. It's like you want to love this palette. The color story is extremely unique, but you just have to find a way to navigate using these colors. You know, in spite of there being a lack of a transition shade. And I mean, this palette, it's very unique. It's extremely unique. And for the price point that this one was at, that to me is like another, because if you are not familiar with Natasha Denona's palettes, her palettes, typically you are looking somewhere in the ballpark of, I believe it's $65 to like $129. This one, to me, if it was, you know, the $65 one, it would make a little bit more sense. You know, again, there's no transition shade. This is not a palette that you can utilize all throughout the year. This one is definitely a limited edition palette that you will get limited usage out of, because if you kind of base your makeup according to the seasons, according to, you know, the weather and whatnot, you are not going to be walking around with shades listed such as Acrobat or Razzle Dazzle for Christmas. I mean, if you do, get down, you know, like makeup is an artistic expression of each individual that touches a brush. It's not a 365 palette, you know, like her other palette that I own, the bronze palette. That one, it has the same amount of shadows, 15. You have, you know, the same amount of shimmers and metallics as opposed to mattes. That one you can use all throughout the year. That one to me, and palettes like that one to me that are more universal and more of an everyday palette, I would easily pay $129 for that one. We are going to move to this next kind of shimmer shade, which is Act. This shade here. And I'm just going to turn my brush around and I'm going to put a little bit of Act on it. I'm going to put that right here. Okay, I felt a little bit of fallout, not much. Yeah, this color story is giving me Rio vibes. Not particularly Rio de Janeiro, but there was a cartoon, I believe it was by Pixar, and it was based around Carnival. And that cartoon came out a few years ago. Like when I saw the press release for this palette, that was immediately what I thought about. And I'm like, oh, that's such a fun palette. You know, I thought it was in conjunction with something like a partnership with something, you know, along the lines of Carnival or something tropic, something fun. And yeah, so that's what this palette reminds me of. And now that we kind of have that act there in the middle, I'm going to use a clean brush, and I'm just going to lightly go over act as well as acrobat, because what I want to do is just kind of merge the two somewhat together. Lastly, we are going to use Snow Cone, which is this metallic shade here. And I'm going to apply it with my finger. That's what it looks like. I'm going to take it there. For underneath, what I'm going to do, I picked these cool little colorful eyeliners up from Ulta. They are by LA Girl. I am going to use this shade, which is called Tropical. This is what it looks like. I'm going to use that as a liner. So I'm just going to use my smudge brush and put this color here, which is Flip, on the lower lash line. For our blush, the Saharan Blush Volume 1 by Juvia's Place, I'm going to use this brown here and Neo, which is this one here. And for our lips, I'm going to use, and this is by NYX, this is called Candy Slick. I just discovered this particular lip gloss. Oh my goodness, I love it so much. I really do. This one is in the shade Cream B. So I played around with it earlier. I didn't even use a liner then, and I'm not going to use one now. I just feel like it doesn't even need a liner. And it smells like candy. Oh, but it's not sweet. And don't ask me how I know. My lashes, I'm going to apply them off camera. I'll be back and then I'll give you guys my absolute final thoughts on this palette. Okay guys, so this is the final look. Off camera, I applied some lashes by Ardell. They are from their Naked Lash collection in the number 421. I'm kind of digging these lashes. They're not overwhelming. They, give, but they don't give too much. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so nevertheless, let's wrap this video up. My final thoughts on the Natasha Denona Circo Loco palette. I like it. Here's why. Natasha Denona is known for her color payoff. She's known for her pigments. She's known for giving you amazing quality palettes. I like it because I think it's fun. I think it is unique. I think the color story actually has a color story. It reminds me of, like I said, Carnival, summertime, real tropical. It's giving real tropical vibes for me. So with that being said, I love it. I feel as though you can do a lot of avant-garde, looks with it. I feel like it will really press you to step outside of your traditional eyeshadow comfort zones and actually experiment with different textures, different shadows, different shades. For the nays, starting off again, when I opened the palette, I was bummed that there is no transition shade. Now, I try to be fair because I'm not this expert on, eyeshadows and things. I'm really just kind of getting my feet, my toes wet in the eyeshadow game myself. So I said, well, maybe from my point of view, from a limited point of view, from a more beginner intermediate point of view, you don't see, any sort of transition shades, but it doesn't mean that they're not there. So I had to take that into account. And because of that, I'm just giving you guys my opinion. As it pertains to me and my skill set and my level, I really don't see any sort of transition shades. I mean, I guess if you wanted to use like cotton candy, which is this shade here, yeah, that's about it. Cotton candy. Even if they would have went with like snow cone and made that into a matte, I could see that possibly being a transition shade, but nevertheless. So that is one of my nays, is that there is no universal transition shade for this palette. Maybe they didn't even make it with a transition shade in mind. Who knows? I know for me, when I do my makeup and, I kind of hear throughout the internet stratosphere, coming into fall, you kind of do like the oranges and the bronze and the browns and the creams and things of that nature, the cranberries. Spring is when you kind of pop out with color, and summer, definitely you go full on tropical. This, in my opinion, is strictly for spring, summer. And that is okay, because I have some palettes that I am not touching unless, it's a certain event, a certain time of the year. So, with that being said, there are palettes that I literally only use for certain times of the year. But at the price point that this one came at, $129, and I'm hearing even in some other countries upwards of $200, in their currency for this palette, I think that's a little pricey. That is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Y'all have really been showing up for me. Like, every day I log into my YouTube, I'm getting more views, more followers, more like amazing constructive feedback. I am so digging it. I'm here for it, and I am so blessed that you guys are here for me as well. Let's continue it. Let's keep it going. I'm not ready to cut my camera off, and hopefully you guys are not ready to tune me out just yet. So with that being said, as always, we know how it goes. Videos over here. Oh, y'all like my little scarf? I tried to pair my scarf up to match the colors of the palette. But anywho, videos are over here, so feel free to click on one of those guys. Definitely leave me comments in the comment section. Let's chat. Let me know what you guys think. Maybe you can, make a little bit more sense out of this palette than I could. But anywho, we will definitely chat again soon.